There are some texts that just feel ancient. Not just because they're old, but because their names echo through our culture, even if their true voices have been, well, kind of muted, replaced by these simple, often twisted caricatures. And maybe no work of human thought has suffered from this more than the Kama Sutra. In our modern imagination, it's been put in a very specific and very small box. But tonight, we're going to peel back those layers of assumption. We're going to journey past that modern caricature and find out what this text really is. A complex, sophisticated, and deeply philosophical guide to the art of living.
So let's just start right at the beginning with the most direct question there is. What is this ancient text, really? If you were to ask the average person on the street, you'd probably get an answer that's quick, confident, and almost completely wrong. It just goes to show you how powerful one simplified idea can be. The common understanding barely even scratches the surface of what this work is all about. So to find the real answer, we first have to face the ghost of the idea that's come to define it for so many of us.
For most people, it's just one thing, right? An erotic curiosity from a faraway land, a catalog of exotic, maybe even acrobatic positions. It's seen as this relic that's only concerned with the mechanics of physical pleasure. Now, this perception, it's not totally baseless, but it's largely a historical accident. It was shaped by the 19th century Victorian translation by Sir Richard Barton. He presented the text to an English-speaking world that was, let's be honest, both fascinated and scandalized by it. And through that lens, he kind of isolated the erotic bits from their deep philosophical context. And in doing that, he missed the entire soul of the work.
The reality is, the Kama Sutra was created as something so much bigger, so much more holistic. It's actually a guide to a virtuous and gracious life, a life where sensory pleasure, or kama, is just one essential part of a balanced and ethical way of being. See, it's not a book about sex. It's a book about life, where sex is an integral, but not the only component. The text is basically arguing that to live fully, you have to live artfully. And to understand this art of living, we have to step out of the bedroom and into the philosophical world that it came from.
A text like this doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's the product of a really sophisticated cultural moment in India's Gupta period, a time of huge leaps in science, art, and philosophy. And it comes from a tradition that didn't see this huge conflict between the sacred and the profane, or between the spiritual and the sensual. Instead, it was all about integrating every part of the human experience, the ethical, the material, the emotional, and the spiritual, into one coherent whole. So you can think of the Kama Sutra as one branch on a much larger tree of knowledge, and all its wisdom is rooted in this complete view of life.
And this is what's so fascinating. Far from being some subversive manual for forbidden affairs, the ideas in the Kama Sutra were woven right into the fabric of society. This worldview was so central it even shaped the most sacred rituals. For example, in a traditional Hindu wedding, the groom makes a sacred vow to his bride that he'll never fail her in his pursuit of 3 key life goals: dharma, or moral duty, artha, material well-being, and kama, or pleasure. Just think about that for a second. The pursuit of pleasure is right there, a sacred promise, on the same level as being a good person and providing for your family. In this way of thinking, love and pleasure weren't distractions from a good life. They were essential pillars of one.
So to really get what the text is about, you have to understand this foundational blueprint for living. In Sanskrit, these goals are known as the Purusharthas, which literally means the aims of a human being. They're like the grand architecture for a complete and fulfilled life. The ancient sages believed that if you focused on just one of these and ignored the others, you'd end up imbalanced and unhappy. The Kama Sutra is a text that's dedicated to exploring just one of them, kama, but it always operates with this understanding that kama has to be pursued in harmony with the other two.
The first and most foundational pursuit is dharma. Now, this one's a pretty complex concept. It's the ethical framework of, well, everything. It includes your moral duty, your responsibility to society, and just the principle of doing the right thing. It comes from an even older idea called Rita, the natural intrinsic order of the universe, like a cosmic symphony. So dharma is our personal path to living in tune with that cosmic order. It's the understanding that our actions have consequences, that what you put out into the world comes back to you, an idea we now know is karma. To live a good life, you first have to be a good person, living by this moral law. You could say dharma provides the riverbanks that guide the flow of your life.
The second pursuit is kama, and this, right here, is where the popular understanding is so tragically limited. Kama is not just sexual desire. It's the pursuit of sensory pleasure and aesthetic enjoyment in all its forms. It's appreciating art, tasting good food, that emotional connection you have with another person, the beauty of poetry, the smell of flowers, the joy of music. It's the entire aesthetic side of being human. The Kama Sutra argues that a life that's only about duty and making money, a life without this appreciation for beauty and connection, is a pretty empty and incomplete life. Kama is what gives life its color, its texture, its flavor.
And the final, ultimate pursuit is moksha. This is liberation, spiritual freedom. It's the release from samsara, that endless cycle of death and rebirth, which is believed to be driven by our ignorance of who we truly are. You achieve moksha by casting off that ignorance, by waking up to your true self. Now here's the crucial point that a lot of Western thought often misses. Dharma and Kama are not seen as obstacles to moksha. They aren't worldly temptations you have to run away from. Actually, when you pursue them with balance and awareness, within the ethical framework of Dharma, the experiences of a rich and artful life become the very tools that help polish the soul, preparing it for that ultimate state of self-realization. Okay, so let's dive into one of the most fascinating aspects of the text. The Kama Sutra and other related works lay out a detailed system for classifying human beings. Now, to our modern minds, this might seem a little rigid, maybe even offensive, but it's really important to see it not as a literal scientific categorization, but as a form of ancient psychology. It's kind of like how the ancient Greeks used the four humors to understand temperament, or how modern psychology uses personality types. It was a systematic way of trying to map the nuances of human nature, a language for understanding why different people act and desire and connect in different ways. Based on a mix of physical traits, temperament, and even scent, the texts describe four main archetypes for women. There's the Padmini, the lotus woman, associated with water, who is seen as the ideal of grace and beauty. Then you have the Chitrini, the art woman. Aligned with air, she's vivacious, creative, sociable. The Shankhini, or shell woman, is connected to fire. She's passionate, but can also be defensive and moody. And finally, there's the Hastini, the elephant woman, of the earth element, who is grounded and strong, but said to be driven by coarser appetites. And again, this wasn't about judgment. It was about understanding. It was a way of mapping the diverse landscape of human personality.
And the descriptions of these archetypes are never clinical. They're deeply poetic, really evocative. Of the Padmini, the lotus woman, the text says, "Her face is as pleasing as the full moon, while her body is soft. Her eyes are bright and beautiful, like a terrified deer. She walks like a flamingo." You see, this is the language of art, not science. It's a language that's designed to capture an essence, a feeling, an intuitive sense of a person's nature, not just a simple checklist of traits. It speaks to this idea that understanding another person is, in itself, an act of aesthetic appreciation.
And so, we finally arrived at the part of the Kama Sutra that is most famous, yet still so widely misunderstood. Having set up this whole ethical and philosophical foundation, the text finally turns to the practical application of Kama. But its detailed descriptions of physical intimacy, they're not a sterile, mechanical instruction set. They're presented as an art form, a craft that you have to study and practice and master. The goal isn't performance, it's connection. It's really the difference between a technician who can play the notes and an artist who can create music. The number 64, it's famously and almost exclusively associated with this text. But this number does not refer to 64 sexual positions. It refers to the 64 kalas, or what you could translate as the arts. These arts were considered the necessary education for any sophisticated city dweller. And they cover the entire spectrum of a cultured life, from courtship and intimacy to skills like music, poetry, conversation, even interior design and, get this, magic tricks. The specific arts of love are just one small subset of this much larger body of knowledge for living an artful life.
These intimate arts are broken down into specific techniques across 8 major categories. They include detailed descriptions of different ways of embracing, a whole taxonomy of kisses, the symbolic use of nail marks and teeth marks as a kind of passionate communication, ways of manipulating hair, various postures for union, and even a study of the different types of vocal expressions of pleasure. It's a complete sensory language, a palette of techniques available to lovers. But these are just the tools. They're the brushstrokes. They are not the painting itself.
So, what's the ultimate goal of mastering these 64 arts? It's to create something called rasa. This is a crucial concept, borrowed from ancient Indian aesthetics, especially from the theory of drama. Rasa literally means juice, essence, or flavor. It's the aesthetic flavor of an experience, whether it's a piece of music, a powerful film, or an intimate encounter, that creates a deep and profound emotion in you. It's that feeling you can't describe in words, the one that lingers long after the experience is over. The 64 arts are not the end goal. They are the techniques the artist uses to evoke a shared experience of rasa between two people. The goal is to transform a physical act into a transcendent, emotional, and aesthetic masterpiece. And this brings us right back to where we started. The Kama Sutra, when you actually look at it through its own philosophical lens, is revealed to be a text not just about sex, but about connection, about balance, and about the art of living a full, virtuous, and beautiful life. We've gone from a simple caricature to a complex system of thought. And it makes you ask a final, crucial question. What other ancient wisdom, what other complex systems for understanding the world, like alchemy, a precursor to chemistry, or astrology, an early attempt at cosmology and psychology, have we flattened into simple cartoons? What profound knowledge might we be overlooking, simply because we're viewing the past through the narrow lens of our own modern biases?